Oh shit. What? Wait. Wait. What do you mean it's up? It's up. It's up. It's up. It's up. Okay. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. Just wait. Just wait. We're coming. We're pulling this up. We're doing this. This is happening. Okay. All right. We are getting in. Getting in. Getting in. What are we getting in? We're getting in today's episode. That's right. Today's episode of 3D Changes Perspective is coming at you in just a second. Don't be going away. Stay today, because here we go. We're here to play. It is 3D Perspectives. I don't know, I just made that up. Okay, so we're going to start today off by, thanking the sponsor, roundlyx.com. Go to roundlyx.com and sign up today. Use the code Changes Perspectives to get that $15 in Bitcoin right off the bat. As you can see, it's available on Google Play and the App Store for Apple. Go ahead, get on roundlyx.com or check the app. Get on and get started on rounding up with crypto. That's right. Every time you make a purchase, it will just round up your change up with crypto to help you DCAN, daily crypto average in to cryptocurrency, making it easy and affordable. Actually, I like the ideal bumps. It's my favorite part of it. So I really recommend giving that a try. The ideal bumps is definitely my bet. What I like. So without any further ado, let's get rolling. Okay, hold on. There's a button thingy here. Hold on. There's a button thingy here. I know there's buttons, but where are they? There they go. Oh, thank you so much. I love that video, and thank you so much, RoundlyX, for being our sponsor here at Bitcoin Live Network, the decentralized broadcasting network. Okay. Let me pull this down. All right. I'm a little bit flustered because I actually just really enjoy this topic. If you didn't notice, we are asking, are you down with EBB? Are you down with empty block behavior? Do you even know what it is? That's right, Bitcoin Live. We are here to start, and we are talking about empty block behavior. And it's just one of these things where we see it. We've been seeing it for a long time, too. Like throughout the entire years of Bitcoin history, and even before Bitcoin, when the proof of work algorithm started happening, which is what, hash at cash, I think was the first one that we really saw anything on. There is always these like empties or nulls or zeros of nothings, and so this empty block behavior has always kind of confused me as to like why they even exist. Why are they necessary, or are they voluntary? Are they accidental? I mean, are they political, or are they something entirely different? This is the thing. Like, it's kind of hard to tell what these are really about, but there's a lot of different perspectives on what people think the EBB really is. And today, we're gonna get you down with EBB, because you know me, I'm that hash guy and Kai that likes these kinds of things, and we're going to explain it to you the numbers way. Yes, right. Through the numbers, we will get this. Oh, my thingy's off. Hold on one second while I fix this. Transform. Edit. Okay. I'm just making sure you guys get the full top. Alright. Here we go. So. Yeah. Alright. So, we're going to look, the very first thing we're going to look at is empty block versus noise. So for many years, empty blocks appeared on main chain Bitcoin. People called it noise. And then we saw empty blocks on like alt chain You know, like, alt-chain Bitcoin, uh, they call it something else. And I always thought this was something kind of unique, and I never could quite understand why we would see this. Now, if you're looking in that top right-hand corner, that is the QR you can scan to visit this website right here. That's right, we make it easy for you to find the content too. Also, it might be in the description of the YouTube video if you're looking on YouTube right now. If you're live on YouTube, you can comment and talk to me. Alright, so basically, we're asking, why are there so many empty blocks? I'm going to do this. I don't know if it gets rid of my thingy, but we're going to do this. There we go. And this is, a year or so old, but this was a person who is a major contributor or a major analyst with Bitcoin SV. Basically, he was a bit concerned over these empty blocks taking place. There's an entire video here, you can hear him talking about it, and you can see that they're running it on the lines of profitability. 16.10% more profitable, so they're going to probably take the effect of, this is why it's not noise. Because it's losing its profitability from it. Well, Bitcoin doesn't lose its profitability from its EBB. So let's just read this out. Hensley believes that it is a bit of a concern that is allowed to happen. This is an estimation. Someone has spotted that it's more profitable to mine on BSV, according to coin.dance, and he's concerned that this is an attempt to mine out the BSV while it's relatively easy. And what they mean is they believe someone is just submitting the block template as a block in the mining. That's what they're proposing. And I'm not going to say that's never been done, because it definitely has been done and tested by many times. And sometimes misconfigurations cause that, and I'm going to prove that to you later, or I'm going to at least attempt to show you the proof of how misconfigurations can cause these types of problems. So Hensley points out right now the BSV block subsidy still outweighs any fee regarding any fee rewards gained from mining even larger blocks. He sees that the remaining of the case until at least the halving in next 2024. Furthermore, Hensley has seen something similar to this happen before. The last time it occurred was in a roll-up to the Cayman versus Wright trial in Florida. Back then, he concluded that it was someone who wanted to have exposure to the run-up to the conclusion of the trial. He also noticed that they started around the time frame of the Huddle trial, and wonders if someone is speculating on the outcome of that. He knows that this is just conjecture and no evidence to back up. Something I did try to find at the time, believe it or not, at the time this was going down, there was proof on Twitter that there was a big entity or a series of entities that were mining on Bitcoin SV. But it took about a year or so before they realized that they weren't configured properly. I could not find these tweets. Maybe someone else will find these tweets. But there used to be tweets about this because of the Huddle trial. It came out around there, and I think at some point in time, someone on Twitter kind of threw up in guards that maybe it might be used against Huddle. Then Huddle was basically like, bro, I don't mind that, or something like that. So, if you can get that kind of information, it'd be really fun. And there isn't a whole lot here. He's just basically going off of the point of perspective of its probability. It's more profitable to not have any blocks in there. You just have a slightly, like a unilateral size that you're constantly doing with nothing there. Also, this is a chain where you have your next block's total possible size is partially based on previous block size. Over a rounding number. So, similar to difficulty, but for block total size constraint possibilities within the limitations of either infinite or big block data structure for blockchains. But I think down here kind of explains what he's really getting at. An unknown party is mining empty blocks on BSV. Hensley speculates that this might be related to the outcome of various trials. He's mildly concerned about it, and he thinks it's a temporary thing, and it's partially due to miners having no incentive to stop them. or he thinks it exists more because there's no incentive to stop them. And he believes that this would resolve in time, especially after the next halvening. And he says there's nothing to prevent anyone from mining empty blocks, which can be uh, considered honest mining. And he says that because he's basically probably admitting to the fact of misconfigurations cause this. And a lot of times you don't actually just configure your miner, it's gonna mine more empties than anything. So block delay excuses is the next reasoning. Now I know this, you're probably thinking this one thing for just all of empty block versus noise. Yeah, basically, for the longest time, people thought empty blocks were noise. It's part of probability. It's part of how randomness works. Anything can randomly be a block. Any provider, any injector, any node, any miner. Well, not node, miner. Problem is, the code itself can be a miner. And not directly as in it produces hash, but it can at least produce a block. A block of nothing, by the way. Something we'll get into. Something that's kind of like foreshadowing of what's to come soon. Well, let's go back to block delay excuses, because, you know, I'm going to say because of Bitcoin SV, because of other big blockers that first came onto the party after the limitation setup of blocks on blockchains, Bitcoin SV being one of the first big blocks where it could go extremely big, and did see some of the most empty blocks be during this time frame of only having more and more capability of block size. So people for a long time thought there was a reason behind this. This is a form of delay, and here Mr. Joshua is trying to say it's degradation. Oh wait, no. Oh, nope. My bad. Something is in the wrong spot. I just realized my tab is in the wrong spot. My bad. So block delay is the other thing, which I guess was in the video, but it's not in the thing. I had the video in a thing, and now it's not, and I can't click on it. Let's see. Yeah. So you're gonna have to go here to get the video yourself, my friends, because it's not pulling up for me right now. So that was the second one, and basically in there he talks a little bit about there is sometimes block delay during blocks. So like they're doing processing power, and they're trying to get everything set up for the next block. So that delay of processing all these big block information just causes a delay, which causes the protocol to then perform the block, which is an empty block. So, and the protocol is actually set on BSV. I believe there is some form within the code. It's like in between algorithms, there is a set number of what the base template sets to. So, and I don't know if that's purely node based or what, because every time that it's like an empty block based on the protocol, we don't know if it's node based or not. Like, we physically can't figure that out. That's an impossibility. We'd have to get rid of all nodes off of a chain, but then we can't view what's going on without them. So I guess we're gonna start doing miner directly to print to figure out more information. And in there we have, now the next one we have, this is the one we're supposed to be at. Intentional is the next excuse. So this one is degradation. Is one of the intentionals that we're seeing in here, meaning that it's being degraded on a reasoning. So Bitcoin SV network is currently under immense degradation from the majority of hash power mining empty blocks on the network. The Bitcoin SV is suffering from hash power mining with empty blocks on the mining network. Since most of these blocks do not include transactions, this causes a slew of issues. A partnership has yet to include memory pools that store user transaction records. These blocks are filling up millions of transaction data. So the meme pools are filling up while empty blocks are being piling up. That was their problem, and this was actually very recently. This one's from 2022. I think it first started in what 2018 or 2019. So, and there actually became more activity on the chain during this time frame too. So, I have a thing that it might have something to do with activity more than anything. So, Bitcoin Associates wrote that there currently exists a majority of miner on the Bitcoin SV network producing empty hash blocks. The miner intentionally obfuscates their Coinbase string with a constantly changing string. So basically, every time their miner is asked for a data point, they're given a different string. So no one can confirm the same internal string, of that block. So no one has the same data string, and that means the header's set the same, but the data inside the data block of the header is changing. Everyone has something different, so we can't align there. The association also reported increased malicious activity from the same miner intentionally mining empty blocks, meaning they can point down to one miner. Now, I'm going to point out something here. There is such thing as hive mining. I didn't get anything on it just because I didn't think about it at the time. But hive mining is just where, like, you normally see it on, like, Monero and stuff like that. You have, like, one server redirecting miner traffic. So that server is technically the miner, but it has a bunch of miners performing all the actual math, and everybody gets paid, almost like a pool system. So it's like independent pool systems. And I'm actually going to say what we're seeing here was the first test of that on Bitcoin SV. And the reason why I say that is because every time it was being requested for information, the system wasn't configured right. So it was just giving the next one the system was trying to put out instead of just having one consolidated in concrete. And there are actually different types of hashes that perform these actions that we're seeing here. So that is the other thing it could be, which might be kind of cool if it is. So then this next part just says they've been seeing it going on since 2020 from the same miner. Mining empty blocks prevents miners from obtaining the consent of the party who issued the unilateral contract. They're basically saying this creates a contract that no one asked to be done. There is a valid unilateral contract between the issuer of Bitcoin tokens and the network's nodes. Satoshi Nakamoto issued this unilateral contract. This universal contract fulfills 6 functions highlighted in the 5th section of Bitcoin's white paper to begin with all new transactions to have broadcasted to node operator machines. And it just basically allows people, it's your header, right? It's like rules of engagement, rules of the database, basically, is what we're talking about. And one of the major things they're talking about is the header. Generating empty blocks is not entirely illegal according to the Bitcoin's white paper regulation steps 1 and 2 for running a network node. So even in the steps, there's reason for blank nodes. Ooh, dang. That's kind of like a burn and a half from the grave and up, and in so many different ways. I can't even explain how utterly bad of a burn that really is. So, this is their perspective of intentional excuess. And then you have Natrual Phanonmon excuess. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to give you this one. Oh, so you can find this post, my friends. Alright, now we're going to go to Natrual Phanonmon excuess. And I think this is one of the few or first times that I saw it being used as Natrual Phanonmon outside of Bitcoin entirely. So I wanted to use it because it's kind of neat to see people in altcoins starting to have that main base Bitcoin perspective. So Natrual Phanonmon just basically saying, it's natural, bro. It happens. What the heck just happened? Okay, okay, there we go. Come on. Yeah. So, within the first 4 million blocks, I found that a significant fraction of them are empty. If miners are rewarded for writing transactions in their best interest to at least partially fill out the block, This is true. You're actually not putting anything in the block or transactions in the block, not putting validatable transactions in the block does reduce the amount of fees that you should or potentially could receive. Because you receive fees on top, that's considered a tip, on top of the block fee. And yeah, it actually in code, it's called a tip. When we tip a miner, we pay a miner fee. In Bitcoin, it's called a tip. Ethereum originally was called a tip too. So, in short, empty blocks propagate around the network more quickly than blocks that aren't empty. And as you see, we have a little graph here that just kind of helps us see the frequency of empty blocks on Ethereum. And this is the fraction of non-empty blocks compared to the block height. So I'm gonna keep it zoomed in like this. Heck yeah. So if two mining nodes find the proof of work solution to the blocks they're mining at the same time, only one of the blocks will ultimately be accepted by the network. The other one will become an uncle. The block that is able to propagate around the network more quickly will be one to be accepted by the community, and hence the one to get block reward. There's clearly some game theory going on under what conditions is better to mine empty blocks and forego that transaction fee. I'm not a miner, but probably when the network is under the most stress. The blocks being submitted by the other miners are fullest, and that way your empty block is going to propagate much more quickly relative to the others, but I'm sure there's a balance here before you start. And this is kind of another reference to block delay. In other words, block delay causes a natural phenomenon. If you got a bunch of blocks, you got a bunch of data in your thing, you have to arrange it, okay? So Ethereum was one of the, not one of the first, I think one of the major blockchains where they had a arrange setup. They had to arrange the block in sequential order by block time, or by stamps. So, and it was one of the ones where it was like a requirement or whatever. So, the reason why that was so strange or whatever is that means that you have to perform extra work. Have to perform. So times of stress where you're fighting for that 12-second time, it would make sense for people to just submit empty blocks. Blocks with either a single zero, or only zeros, non-verifiable data, or literally no data in the block spot of the block header. So that makes sense. Naturally. Even if the blockchain was to pick that, that would make sense. Now I want to make sure you guys get this. Let's get this out. Bigger, yeah. So, what are empty blocks? I mean, really, empty blocks are a common type of block. It's the template base, or the base block the template fills. So all blocks start empty. Without a template or data, a simple blank hash string. Not every empty block is the same though. For example, not all empty blocks are like blank empty strings, nor base block hashes, or a template. We can easily see three different angles, or from the most miners, then if we look at other attackers' perspectives, more angles appear. And if we look at the utilizers of the chain, and we see a few more that show up as well. So basically we're saying how you look at a empty block, or EBB, the empty block behavior, determines really kind of what you see an empty block is. So with the big block delay, remember we're talking about the delay, big blocks have that more need for delay, meaning the nodes are more, they have to have more time to process that information inside of it to process successful blocks, as well as more time to fill and arrange blocks. That means you need more processing power to validate a block that you've been given as proof. So you can say, yeah, this is a good block, bro. And at the same time, you need more time to both fill and arrange those blocks as well. So the bigger blocks can be, the longer the delay can be. Can be there being the special word. There can be being the special word, you know. Being the optimal term here for many as well, because, you know, newer nodes are beefier than their ancestors to help with this specific situation, i.e., as we go down the line, this should happen less, just by the strength and power behind the node's ability itself. And I think we already looked at this one already, but it's back on the list because it does show the exact same data. Oh, yeah, I just want to refer back to here because this is where this data point was at. And then we want to go to the next one, which is the next real point, small block relay. And what is a small block relay? Well, small blocks have a fast transaction feature where a miner can be set up to process specific use cases like meme pool draining. That's a very specific one that we do see, by the way. Also, like free transaction catch is another one, and user-specific catches are another one. So these chains may see empty blocks right after a successful block. Yes. Small blocks have a natural phenomenon. We see a securing block appear immediately after it for no real reason. No one mined it. No one mined it. Proof of that right here on Mr. Lop's page. I did tweet out Mr. Lop today. Hopefully he doesn't get mad at me, because he's a big reference in here. So in order to work on finding a valid block to become the new tip of the blockchain, miners need to set half a dozen fields for their headers of the new block. The only two fields that are highly dependent on the data from the previous block is like the block previous hash and the Merkle root of, you know, like all the transactions in the new block. That's it. Cool. Means everything else can be blank, can be set to nothing, or have nothing in there. The other ones need at least a set string to use as a template, or a series, or a 0 or a null string to use within the template. So here he's actually showing us different versions of the field, like what the field is, the size of that field has for its bit size, I believe, and the type of characters or integers or units or the things we see inside of there. What type of hash? What kind of mixture of characters is it going to be? So we see the fields are version, previous block, Merkle root, timestamp, difficulty target. Now, this is a basic Bitcoin block. Okay, size, we see 4, 32, 32, 4, 4, 4. And we see the biggest ones here, previous and Merkle, meaning they are going to have the most amount of information besides the actual block. Right? And we can see the type. You can see, you know, version is the only one that's a straight up integer. Merkle hash and Merkle root and block hash, those are characters because they're a hash. It's going to contain a mixture of shit. Timestamps, difficulty target, announce, they're going to be a unit 32, and you can see it's set to some kind of limiter. So there is a period of time after which a miner has received the latest block's header from its network peers, but has not yet checked if all the transactions blocked and updated its UTXO set. So it hasn't validated everything yet. Because mining is essentially a global race to find the next block, you're going to hear that phrase over and over and over. Every second of work counts. Miners want to always be working on the next block. Thus, during this period of a miner's typically avoids putting any transactions in the block apart from the Coinbase transaction, as they don't know which transactions were in the previous block, and including any conflicting transactions could result in double spends, which could also cause network to reject the block completely and not pay that miner for the reward. Thus, during this period of Merkle root and next block template will be for a Merkle tree that only contains a Coinbase transaction. So, it's kind of like a base transaction. So, template. You can see here he actually takes a lot of data and he just kind of floats it out, and you can come back and see and read all of Lop's information. We're not going to go through it all. We're just going to briefly go over the major points to get you caught up. Here is the math behind it, and it just basically says what we see is about 1.7% of blocks are empty, period. And to be honest, I feel like that's low. Yeah, I remember a time where I felt like the number was 3%. And I remember making the joke 3.3 to 3.1. Let's say Oracle, cicada, cicada, cicada. And that's a reference to the cicada trials, um, which were happening around the same time frame as I believe the 3.3 to 3.1 switch of empty block percentage on Bitcoin. So empty blocks between full blocks per month, and so the number of them, and these are in between full blocks. These are literally securing blocks. These are blocks no one mined. These are just protocol inserted block. For some reason, the protocol felt that full block needed to be secured, and it secured it. As odd as that sounds, it does it more often, the busier the more the more it gets, as in the more broadcasts it sees coming in from, um, the all of the nodes and everything broadcasting in. Well, yeah, that's. Oh, I just realized the chat wasn't popped in. That's actually, you know, the big thing here. That's where it's like, hey, bro, blah da 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 da, and yeah. Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate that you're enjoying this. But that actually is kind of what we want a blockchain to do, right? We want a blockchain to self-secure. Something that we've seen and heard people say many, many times is, oh man, we got to have this blockchain faster so it can secure itself. We can need concreting blocks. And what they don't realize is that's an actual natural feature of a blockchain. It's a database feature. Something that Block kind of gets pointing at here. This is more database than we realize. So this past 6 months, we've been averaging about 0.8 empty blocks per day, which is not bad. And when the min pool is empty, that's fine. About half my assumed of maximum 0.7 per day. So what he's saying is we're actually about half that. That's really good. Especially when the main pool is empty. That's good. Now, the main pool is not always empty, keep that in mind. So then he shows data. Lots of data. From the first block on up to, at the time of this was written, I don't remember when that was. So I think we're around the 70,000 or 69,000 marker range around in here. I think 69,000 range maybe. For blocks, so that's a good number of blocks, yeah. And we can see definite. I'm just gonna zoom in on that, bro. I'm gonna look. I don't even gotta. You don't look. Kids recognize this. There's probably a kid looking at a screen going, "Hey, look at the finger painting, Dad or Mom." And guess what? That's a sign. That means something. Right now, someone's going, "Low, bro. Is that an ocean or is that a sky up there, man?" Yeah, exactly. That's a tidal wave. That's a freaking tidal wave coming at us, bro. But what's not even done? Like, there's other ones in here that if you get really close in there, like right over here, look at the correlation of these block dots. Look at the correlation of the block dots. Look at how they're even overlapping, getting close. They're all like in perfect lines. Always, once a geek, always a geek. What up, Kitsune? Boop, boop. Yes, nerdy is what we be. Let's bring it out, right? But that's the whole point. Sometimes you need a geeky, nerdy person to point out things that are obvious to us, but it's not so obvious to everyone else. Like what the EBB might be. So if you actually look down, we can see what like all these different dots correlate. And really what we're seeing is that when these dots are correlating in lines, but different colors that are overlapping, we can start to say some form of coordination is involved with those sets of data points, chains, or information. As you can see, this is data information. So what does that mean? Well, either we have interconnecting systems or we have a form of attack. Now, nowadays, I'm going to say we see a lot more of that congestion. If you look on the right side of that map, that side over there, that has a lot of congestion for a reason, because there's a lot more interconnectivity in blockchains now. So Alright, but you see those two vertical lines going up and down. It looks like someone just put a fingerprint line across someone's eyeball or something. They were trying to do like the 0 or sub-zero, and they got 2 lines instead of 1. Yeah, yeah, that's not a good sign. That's a bad sign. Notice it's all the same thing. Actually, it's only 2 different pools, so that's bad. And you see that blue one right above me? That's not bad. Believe it or not, that blue one used to be super common. And that's malfunction. That's actually proof of something is improperly configured or testing of some kind. And inside that, all that blue, there is bits of another node that we believe might be testing. But there's not a whole lot more in this one little spot. So there are basically 2 areas of the chart that stick out to Mr. Lott. The first is the horizontal cluster of blue. So the tidal wave or the sky. And it's kind of interesting because all these blocks, they remind around the expected 10-minute block after the previous. So they're not clearly a fast block at all. And that was created empty blocks for the miner's safety. The fact that this was happening for over a year makes me think it was likely due to an accidental misconfiguration. Also notice that later blocks in this illustration were also signaling different things, perhaps the mining empty blocks in order to put more pressure on the network to upgrade the block size. Another point to note is that this group of blocks stopped being mined after a specific block, which is about 3 weeks after the Bitcoin Cash fork. And I am going to be honest, Mr. Lap, if you were watching this, that horizontal line is most likely was a series of tests done to see how many miners would be willing to do the switch, because not only were they not sure, I'm sure you remember, bro, they weren't sure which one they wanted to do. Did they want to stick with 2? Did they want to do this? Did they want to, there was like so many different options they were all trying to fight for. So that was a series of tests, I believe. I believe, bro. I got no proof on that. I can only have my memory as where it comes from. So, interestingly, as of 2020, the only pool that is still sometimes minting an outrageous amount empty slow blocks sandwiched between full blocks is the VIA BTC. So as you can see in the upper right hand corner, as the empty blocks time elapsed since previous block chart, that they really are one with a primary orchestrator with the Bitcoin Cash fork. I was literally trying to scroll up in the little preview window. I was reading that in the preview window. Oh man, stooge me. So this little goldish dot. And I don't know which one the Bitcoin Cash fork was. But yeah. Somewhere in here. So up-down conjecture means something, is what he's saying. When it goes up-down, that means something different than when it goes horizontal. So basically he's saying if we're seeing these, because these are in between full blocks, if it's horizontal, then that means they're doing something, either misconfiguration, testing, privacy blocks, things of that manner. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Hold on, let me get, whoa, up and down. Yeah. So that we're saying is like some form of attack. That's normally what we call like an ill-natural position for this type of data point, if it's all the same, you know, and if they're overlap in big clusters, then we can say there's some kind of interconnectivity most likely there. Or, you know, as like this little blue-ish cluster area that you're seeing right here, this was a lot of attacks. A lot of attacks. It's creepy. So, what I'm proposing is that this is a natural phenomenon from in between the algorithms of blockchain and almost all databases. So, all blockchains, databases, probably thinking I'm crazy, right? So, hear me out for a little bit more, okay? So, all header-directed databases, you know, DAGs, blockchains, various different formations of these things, they tend to produce empty blocks. What the reason is like less confusing than some will believe. But as we just read from the extensive look into empty block behavior by Mr. Law, most of these empty blocks are a result of the base template, meaning the database creation of the data is a blank template, meaning there's no data in the block at first. That's why the blockchain is just randomly putting these securing blocks in there, because it's only access, it can't gain the transactions on its own. So it has nothing else to throw in there but empty blocks. Okay, so, and because of time stamping confusion. So that was a big thing there that we kind of briefed over it. I didn't find a really good explanation of it, but because timestamps don't always align, that causes the data to not always align. So remember earlier we were saying, hey, they were sending out different things each time. One of the things that was proposed that could have been changed each time, because it was a hash, and we don't actually know what data was in that hash, is it could have just been a block. It could have been a timestamp change each time, which would have changed the hash, and the data could have been exactly the same, but we don't know because it wasn't a verifiable signature. So that was an example from earlier, and kind of helps put some information out there. Although these, may not be the only reasons behind EBB, like the timestamp confusion, or it's just a blank template being put in by the system. These are the two main factors behind all block databases to have at least the potential for EBB. I'm not saying it has to be done, but it has the potential for it because of these two main factors. And at this point, we actually can safely say, as a single blockchain or a header-directed block-styled database becomes ages, its empty block behavior should slowly result or lessen in numbers of the EBB being seen per Planck cycle year. So something that's kind of hard to explain is what a cycle year is in blockchain. Bitcoin, it's every halvening. Not all chains have a halvening. DAGs, for example, it's every so many days after the initial genesis, or it's every so many blocks. Like one of the natural cycles we have in Bitcoin is every 2016 blocks, and that is I believe a difficulty cycle year. So a Planck cycle year, generally speaking, would be 365 days worth of Plancks. Now, I don't actually know the number of Plancks that is. That's I'm scared what number that's going to give me. Yeah, that did not work out right. No. No, see, this is why sometimes I can't give you the proof behind things. It's not easy to find out how many days is in a Planck. But if I go Planck time theory, although like 2 years ago I could have easily searched the thing I searched the first time and it would have popped up. Planck units. It's actually how your computer tells time. It is how computers do time. So a Planck cycle a year is 365 days worth of these, and it's not actually 365. It's 364.35 or 33 or 25. I don't remember because you got a 4-year off cycle. Yeah, 25. So it's 365.25. 365.25 Planck units. The number of Planck units in that time frame is a Planck cycle year. So what I'm saying is, for every one of those, it should go down as time goes down. Because this is a natural phenomenon, we do see in databases, but let me just show you more proofs. Like, I can't just come at you with some info, right? I know I can't exactly show you some of this information, but let me show you what I can show you, bro. So, why empty catches are a bad idea. Trying to grab nothing can be worse than just trying to grab anything in a database call function. Why empty cache blocks are a bad idea. I've just seen a question. Oh, let me get the reader mode. Why is all my reader modes turned off? Okay. Oh yeah, because they keep turning that off. So, they're a bad idea in general because it's truly a rare condition where a failure of expectation conditions more generally is properly met with no response whatsoever. On top of that, empty cache blocks are a common tool used by people who use the exception engine for error checking that they should be doing something preemptively. In other words, they'll do an empty catch block to make sure system's working right and they get an error they're expecting to get. And then if they get that, they'll run the actual whatever to make sure it's like a network check almost, but in this case it's a error check. And to say that's not always a bad is untrue because it's sometimes needed. It's true of very little. I mean, there can be circumstances where either you don't care that there was an error, or the error doesn't matter, or it doesn't stop it from doing anything. And he gives examples of errors that, well, doesn't really make a difference, right? Okay, cool. But his point is his point, right? That's his point. That's his point. These are error proofs that you get this error, it ain't gonna hurt you, bro. So generally, you should try only catching the exceptions, and you can actually handle that. And that is a point. We can handle exceptions, but we're not handling exceptions in like Bitcoin or in these directed databases, these header-directed databases, or hash-directed databases. There are two different ones. But anyways, we're not running any kind of exception. That's why we get these blanks. That's why we get these. If the protocol, if the consensus model could handle injection of transactions, like i.e. via through mempool, under certain points of reasoning, meaning like, we don't use time because time doesn't exist, but you could say stuff like furthest away, lowest in cost, opposite of price point of the most current. So if you was to have auto-securing blocks that secure in between max full blocks, or in times of extreme congestion of a lot of people trying to compete for that block, then it would make sense to try to pull the cheapest and free ones immediately after as a securing block. It would reduce mempool probably much faster, considering those potentially could also be smaller, and you could just pull the cheapest ones by the smallest megabyte hash size, or the smallest character string hash size, at a time out of the mempool, just as you get them. Now, it could be rejected or something, right? But it's being done by the if this is actually being done by the consensus, it wouldn't matter. It's just gonna be put in. So if you want your chain to have NFTs natively, this is the spot to put it in. But as I've been trying to figure out this problem on Dogecoin, it's not easy to figure out. And there are people trying to figure it out, how to get this solved. But there's more to this than what meets the eye, but not too much more. We're literally right at the edge of what you guys should be getting at, which is basically, there's a better way to handle this. There's gotta be. Well, believe it or not, as odd as it is, in databases, there are entire papers, documentations, algorithms, and sets of information to do exactly what I'm saying. To either prevent, detect, and or repair block corruption. And now I'm using the block corruption here because that's what's used here by Oracle. This is the people who created Java. This is by those people, not not JavaScript, Java. So and a bunch of other great digital systems. No, we're not going to go through it. I'm leaving this here for you. My point of this is twofold. A, there are ways to fix this, prevent this, stop this, blah, 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 without ruining the security of the blockchain. Two, there's another really good example to look for. SQLs, specifically MySQLs. So, a constraint to prevent the insert of empty strings in MySQL. Because remember, one of the big things we said was in these templates, they tend to have empty strings, or they are completely just empty strings. An empty string is a bit confusing. So in this question, I learned how to prevent the insert of a nullish value, but unfortunately, an empty string is being inserted anyway. So apart from preventing this PHP side, I would like somehow a database constraint to prevent this from being stored, basically. And yeah, so there it is. Here's your reference point for how to do it. There is a way to do it. It's actually quite simple to check and prevent that from being stored. In other words, we can prevent the blockchain from even doing that if we wanted to. And it's super easy. And natively on Python and PHP and C#. Strange how it's so many almost core native processing systems can handle this in a single freaking string. Well, I think C# is like 23 strings, but or 23 lines, but it's even easier than that. It's even stranger than that. So what in Oracle is handled by a not null constraint needs a not null constraint and 2 triggers before update and before insert into MySQL. So some hacking like if it was an error throw, according to the question, blah, 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 the advice would be to buy Prestige SQL might be the best advice here, which Prestige SQL is basically just being considered because it has more of these native catches already built in. And this person is just saying, hey, it still has its limitations, so however, there are plenty of people here stepped outside their blah, blah. I would really recommend taking a fresh look at what's actually missing and go back to the beginning, because it's not actually the software side, it's how a database works that is the problem here. And that's really what they're getting at. It's something more than just the software. So we can prevent the storage of these things, but we can't prevent the creation of these things yet. Okay, so EBB is so common that people have actually thought this was a form of attack. And we're looking at a really old post. And I want to just give you this because what purpose does it serve is the question here. What's inside those empty blocks? Is it conceptually expensive from an empty item? How can a system create blocks that are empty and have no use for, i.e. not having transactions? What happens if there are transactions? Example, like, what happens if we got a lot of people trying to send stuff but nothing we can send? How do we know that our transactions are making it through? Verifying it through mining, and other transactions will get through the destination address. So how do they even know that we're actually getting through, right? So empty blocks still contain data. They aren't devoid of data. They simply do not have transactions other than coin-generated transactions, known as the Coinbase transactions in them. So that's the rewards for the miner. That. Since an empty block does not contain any transactions from the Bitcoin network, it is considered to be empty. Empty blocks are still computationally expensive because miners still have to produce a proof of work. They still have block headers, which are 80 bytes, and all of the fields that are non-empty blocks do. They still have a list of transactions, but that list just contains one transaction, the Coinbase transaction, which pays the miner the block subsidy. Now, we just read in multiple different things that that's not even true. What we just read here is incorrect. There are entirely empty blocks where if there doesn't have to have anything in a block in that header string, it doesn't, including blocks. Data of all kinds, including the Coinbase transaction. There are blocks without even a Coinbase transaction. So, they go on. Empty blocks still have a use. They aren't completely useless. Firstly, they extended the blockchain, adding additional work to the blockchain. The transactions that a block contains does not affect how much work needs to be done to mine the block. So it strengthens the security of the blockchain. Now, this is a great point. What he's saying is that some of the empty blocks that do hit all the points that it was most likely actually created by a node were actually a good thing because it creates more security. And it is possible that you can actually have your blockchain automatically do that, where the winning miner automatically produces a securing block right after it. And if proof of stake systems, if you have a delegator, your delegator does it right after you. So we've seen that in other places. So what we're really getting to is, at the end of the day, many people are going to be confusing probability with possibility. Because even at 0 probability, there's still a chance of having something mathematically, happen. Because only -1 is like without possibility. Only -1 is impossible. So even if it's like -0.5, that's more possible of happening than -1.0. And I wanted to kind of point this out because what we're really getting at is we could produce the probability of having 0 empty blocks, but we can't reduce it to none. We can't make it impossible. So if 0 probability and impossibility mean the same, then if an event with 0 probability doesn't mean that the event is impossible to occur. So that's basically what I'm getting at, is that, yeah, this is the rules of probability, but 0 does not actually mean impossibility. -1 means impossibility, and only -1. And that's a very confusing thing that you're going to have to do some math to figure out. But if you want to learn more about that, be my guest, please. Like, seriously. Right there. Up there. Up there. Be my guest. Come in here, come learn some math, it's fun. And you can actually do the math yourself and see why -1 really does equal impossible. Because -1 equals -1. So a lot of people get confused because of charts like this. I'm going to pull it up. This is something they teach children. 0 is impossible. 1 is certain. This is based on a certainty scale. And the reason when they do this is they have to teach the kids something that's more concrete and finite for them to understand, because in reality, 0 isn't 0 and 1 isn't 1. Even at 1.0 and 0.0, they're still not that. There's still numbers in between them. And that's because numbers exist upon the field of infinities. And so there's always going to be false probability lines and things like this. And there's always going to be the possibility of things that we don't want to happen. So when you go to plausibility versus possibility versus probability, you very quickly will learn that just because something has no probability of happening does not make it no possibility of happening, and just because something has no plausibility of happening doesn't mean it has no probability of happening. And also, if you're looking at it as in like statistics, numbers, math, or causation, or conjunction, or like not conjunction, but comparing, if you're doing it in one of these, it changes the field, changes how it works and why it works. And there's a great paper to explain that, which is all this tells us, which you can read here if you really want to read more about it. I'm not going through it because we pretty much went through it over most of it already. And really, the last problem of the day, we're going to go to the, okay, this is the, alright, home run stretch. Hope you guys are ready for this. Basically, with probability and possibility can be calculated together, but at the end of the day, we're still looking at nothing's impossible, and it's always probable of something to happen. Sorry, I lost my place. So, sorry, I lost my place. So, what are the full reasons for a natural EBB to exist? Time is not a part of the database. So, timestamps not in order. Remember earlier we were saying they weren't in chronological order, so sometimes it was changing that one. Blank templates make up the original state of all blocks, meaning they start off blank. Block swaps is always possible in databases. Ah yes, something new. Block swaps. Come read and learn about block swaps. Now there are block swap algorithms like this one, which is using caching, and there is an actual Bitcoin caching system in Bitcoin that is not actually an algorithm, it's in between algorithms, which is kind of the point. Here's a comprehensive paper on using block swaps to compare network speeds, prices, and uses. Actually, there are systems out there right now that use something similar to this actual system to determine which chain might be faster for your EVM transaction. And these are pretty neat, which just kind of proves that block swap systems are native to databasing, and meaning you can't get rid of it. So only thing you can do is avoid receiving them into your node, which doesn't really make a difference to you, but if it's possible to avoid it in the node, it's possible to avoid it stored on the chain, it's possible to, you know, forget that they exist. Not get rid of them, but kind of forget they exist. And so that's my last point. Because Bitcoin is the way you use it, you can choose to forget it. It's your choice. Now, to end off, I wanted to give this one last paper. It's kind of a funny thing. So we've seen all the different ways that people look at these things. But let's keep in mind, a null block or zero block is not actually empty. There's something in there. Either it's full of zeros or it has zeros. It's got something in there. So what might cause empty blocks, or what might cause these null blocks, which is one of the reasons for a block swap? It's like if you're the leading node, so if you found the block and are still the current top block, and you clear out the data inside that block information before the first confirmation to any other node, this is normally considered caused by misconfiguration by either the miner or the node, or the talking between the two. So you have something causing problems in between the talking of your miner and your node. If you are the history node, so the only node left holding this data, and you have your node swap to null block. Basically, you have it set up to do this automatically if you are the last node holding this data. And this is only going to be available for Python NC pound nodes. That's very important, meaning that's potentially an attack method. So fully pruned, but still within certain, or chain caches. So a form of cache that is found via the full history nodes having pruned the data, but it's still in RAM, making it accessible on the front end of data points, i.e. you can see it on the output of information from the node, and a lot of times like your block explorers will show them, which is kind of the point of this up here a little bit. So let me finish this off and then we'll laugh at this little thing behind me. So if a security block like a ZK snark or a timed roll hashes, yes, timed rolled over hashes is the thing. It's really difficult to find anything non-technical over that. Data has to be its own video. Or if it's not signed with a base 58 signature hash, these are all considered privacy blocks. These privacy blocks can always end up as empty or null, or all zeros, based on how that specific privacy block works. Meaning, timed rollover hashes can actually turn to zeros. Certain non-base 58 signatures can turn to zeros, And there are ZK snarks that once they're viable, once you can't verify them, only thing left is zeros. So there are different ways where this could be done on purpose as a type of privacy. And if certain hostile takeover attacks are performed, like shadow chain attacks and chain poisoning attacks, that can also cause 0 in the data spot of blocks, or a null block. So, what are unnatural ways to have blank blocks? Attacks. Some does it on purpose, for any reason. That's an attack. Yes, this is done for any reason other than Natrual Phanonmon, and is considered an attack. So, on this strange note, let's have a fun laugh at this, because this was produced this year, February 13, 2023, by a major producer of news, data, blah, blah, blah. And in this interviewing time, which we usually know more than 1 to 2 seconds, miners usually get lucky and find a new block using Empty-Block template. They are pushing this as they're being, it's people hacking, but it gets funnier. According to the data from bit info charts, the percentage of empty blocks on the network is usually around 1% to 2%. The stats is more surprising today given the rise of ordinals on Bitcoin, or the ability to permanently etch pictures, data, and stamps onto the blockchain. Problem is, it's always been available, and stamps have been so common. I've been stamping the blockchain with pictures, videos, multimedia, full entire amounts of database data, well, since 2013. Since stamps.io started doing it. And we're not going to stop. And that's the thing, is this has nothing to do with ordinals, and this is the newest one I've seen. It's an attack vector from people putting pictures on Bitcoin, bro. But I've gone through so much to show you how this is just natural. This is just how databases do. It happens. Get over it. So the only thing you can do is not see it, and make sure your shit's configured correctly so you don't have to worry about seeing it. Now, on that, I'm going to give you an adieu, bros and girls and everybody in between.